Some can be managed, but that's the reality. We can no longer just presume that the other things are happening. Guys are left to their own devices. I'll be dealing with a little bit about the disparity in there. And people say, well, you can't do it. And I need to tell you that about 11 years ago, I was in the camp that said, you can't do this. You can't work with Latino families and talk about sexual health and sexual development. You really can't do it. Until I went to Barrio Logan in San Diego, and I experienced a community meeting that was based on the work of the Hablando Claro initiative, which was funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, which is the Plain Talk initiative. Do not confuse Hablando Claro, the way it was done in Barrio Logan, with the Plain Talk initiative. It maintained fidelity to Plain Talk, but it was done with a Latino twist. And so I went and I saw grandmothers, I saw grandmothers, fathers and mothers, and young people engaged in discussions about the goals of that community of preventing teen pregnancy, not by denying teen sexuality, by saying that we want them to be responsible and we're going to support young people to be responsible. I walked out of that meeting and I turned to Marta Flores and I said, I have been a liar for the past 7 years because I have been promulgating this idea that you can't do this with Latino families, you can't do this with the Latino community, and today you have proven me wrong. That if you do it with respect, if you are committed to those families, if you do it with humildad, you get them to share in that mission with you, but they ask you to share in the mission of successful families as well. So it is possible. It takes resources, it takes attention, it takes a lot of time. Boys are oftentimes in Latino, and especially traditional Latino families, to venture outside the home. Girls are provided fewer opportunities outside the home. And it's based, and I don't know how we do this, and that's why I want to have time for our exercise in a moment. I've heard the lore in Mexico. Es que se las van a robar. Las niñas se las llevan. They're going to steal the girls. They're going to take them away, right? And so we do this as a way, we convince ourselves that this is a way to shelter and protect them, right? But man, does it get oppressive if you live in that environment, if you are that girl. And boys, all of a sudden, we don't have that fear que se los van a robar y se los van a llevar. The boys aren't going to be taken away, right? So we give them license to venture out. And sometimes that's wrong too because of the things that they're doing in the community. And so I have had interventions with families that I see in their family, their boys are given license to be outside the home, and they're involving themselves in gangs. They're doing all these negative things, and the girls are being oppressed in the environment at home. And I simply challenge them, if the goal of these values is to protect our children, wouldn't we do the same thing for our boys in this environment? And they kind of avert their gaze and say, yeah. So the goal is that we want our children to be supervised, both the boys and the girls, so that value of protecting and sheltering and guiding our children is one that we should be reinforcing and not simply saying you do it to the girls and give the boys a license. But we also have to create pressure valves so that it is not oppressive. Okay? We have to say that venturing outside the home is the way we learn the social context. And if we don't have the wherewithal to create safe places for our boys and our girls to venture out to, then we become the internal family oppressor. And that's not good for our young people. And actually, once you frame it that way with the parents, both the mothers and fathers recognize they've experienced this. And so sometimes they begin to look for ways to work around that. And helping parents understand that you're not going to be able to go out the way your Anglo-American counterparts go out, on 2-and-2 dates. You may have to go out with an older cousin. You may have to go out as a group. And the national campaign actually promotes that. It's like, that group dating should be the norm in high school, so that there's no, so you limit the opportunities for coercion and pressure in a one-on-one relationship. Latino families have done that historically. We need to say, use that template. And know where your children are going. Know who the adults are around them. We oftentimes think of Latinos the way we interact with Latinos. But in our communities, There have been in California Latino families that have been Latino families residing in California longer than California has been a state. We have legal immigrants, like my family, my parents, who never experienced the status of being undocumented in this country. And then you have undocumented immigrants. And we're going to go through all of these right now that I think are important to recognize who it is in your community you work with. How long have they been here? You know, when I looked at the Iowa campaign, they have that link that talks about the growth of Latino populations from the 1900s to the current time. You know, there have been Latino families in Iowa for quite some time. And who is it that you're serving? Are these families U.S. citizens? Are they legal residents? Or are they presently, right now, undocumented in their status? Are their children U.S. born? Or are they foreign born? And does the community that they reside in want them as community members or laborers? That is an incisive question that I ask. Because if you only want me for the strength of my back and my arms, then be candid about that. But if you want to integrate me into your society, into your community, then there's a different way of going about doing that. Iowa has that welcoming center that welcomes all people, not just, you know, immigrants from other countries. You know, but that tells you a little bit about what the core value Iowa has. And you need to be very good at communicating that core value to new members of the community, so that that they begin to recognize that you expect integration, you want to respect their values, and you also want to know that they are welcome. The first teaching, the welcome that I received in Iowa should be the welcome that all new residents of Iowa receive. Alba was selling me on Iowa, you know. That's the impression. She not only wanted to welcome me, but she wanted to convince me to come to Iowa. We should all experience that. And I oftentimes have to talk about that. There's two types of kids from Latino families, especially when the parents are undocumented. You will experience that some children who are aware that their parents or their siblings are undocumented have this hyper sense of vigilance of protecting them so that nothing happens to them. You know? And this starts at a very, very young age. You know, they recognize this reality and they fear that people will discover this secret and cause harm to their parents and siblings. Then you have, in some instances, kids that recognize that they have more power over their parents because they are U.S. born and their parents are not. And so I have worked with families where the parents are being told, you need to supervise your children more and you need to make sure all these things happen. They're not going to school. And when I finally get in their presence, they tell me, we're trying to do that. But they're constantly threatening that they're going to call the authorities on us. So the amount of power that children can have must be recognized. And the converse is true. Those that are really, truly feeling like they are the protectors of their family as well, knowing how to support those children so that they don't carry those burdens all the time. I don't know where the children are here in Iowa, but understanding those two concepts is very, very important. Faith leaders are very, very important when you work with the Latino community. They are respected by Latino families, and it's important to recognize, I think the general consensus oftentimes is that it's the Catholic Church that is the big player here. And although the Catholic Church is a big player, there are many other denominations that are contributing a great deal to the development and spiritual growth of Latino families.